Hello everyone, this is Lily Luna and welcome to my channel. I'm going to be doing a review of Love Never Dies, the musical, which I just saw for the first time last night. And just to do kind of a quick introduction, since this is my first video on this channel, in case you're not aware, Love Never Dies is a show which is a sequel to the show Phantom of the Opera, of which I am a huge fan of. And this channel is not going to be an only Phantom related channel. I'll definitely do some other stuff related to that, but I will do other things as well. I do want to do a review of The Last Jedi, for example, and I'll just kind of do things as they come up, as if it's something that I have a lot to say about, then I'll just kind of do whatever. I'm still pretty new to YouTube. I'm still kind of finding my footing here. So I definitely welcome any kind of comments, any kind of feedback. If you enjoy this video, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And I'm going to do this one in two parts. I'm going to divide it into Act 1 and Act 2. So this is the first part. I'll be uploading part 2 shortly here. And so moving on from that, I just wanted to give a quick introduction before I move on. So this is Love Never Dies, which, like I said, it's a sequel to The Phantom of the Opera. And just to kind of give you my background as a fan of The Phantom, I am basically a lifelong fan of it. I discovered it as a middle school student and drama student. We were taken to go see it, and that was where it started for me, and I've been a fan of it ever since. I have seen it 19 times in person, both on Broadway and on tour when it's come to my city. I am going to see it again in February, and this will be my 20th time seeing it. So, and not that that's a particularly impressive number compared, because I know there's some other mega fans out there who have seen it like over 100 times. So I'm not trying to say that that's like an especially huge number or anything, but it is, the 20th time is kind of a milestone, so it is significant to me. And just so you're aware, this video is going to go pretty in depth to as far as the details of this show, because I really have a lot to say about it. So it's probably only going to be of interest to other people who are just really huge fans of Phantom of the Opera. So this will probably run a little bit long. I'm basically going to go, like I said, by Act 1 and Act 2 and go over it in order as the songs go throughout the show. I'll kind of touch on that way I don't go off on too many tangents, because I can do that. And also just to give you some background on me as far as what I've been inspired by and influenced by. I am a fan of the Channel Awesome and the Nostalgia Critic and Lindsay Ellis, who used to be on that site but is no longer. They have both done stuff related to Phantom. I've also watched the Phantom Reviewer, who is a channel. He has reviewed pretty much everything related to Phantom, every kind of adaptation you can think of, books, musicals, movies, fan fiction, pretty much everything you could think of. So I have watched a lot of their stuff, and I do enjoy it. So that's kind of who I've been inspired by. But hopefully I won't be repeating anything that they've done. I think I have pretty much my own take on things, and that's what I want to talk about. So moving on from that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so this show, in case you don't know, the show has had kind of a troubled reputation, I guess I would say. It opened in London to mixed to not very good reviews, and it did not last that long. They opened a production in Australia and they made some changes to it. The basic story structure pretty much stayed the same, but they did make a lot of changes. They removed some songs. I think they moved some things around. They gave some lines to some different characters, and it was better received than it had been previously. And it's been in some other countries as well. I know there was a German production, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the German production made yet even more changes, which then carried over to the US production, which is the one that I just saw. And I was already pretty familiar with this show before I ever saw it in person. I've watched many reviews of it. I've listened to pretty much every song on YouTube, wherever I could find it. I've seen bits of the Australian production. They made a DVD out of it. So they basically filmed it like it was a movie. So I've seen a lot of bits from that as well. So I was already pretty familiar with the show. So I pretty much knew what to expect, but I kind of thought that seeing it in person would make it a little bit maybe better than people have made it out to be, but I don't know if I can say that that's the case. So basically we open with there's really no overture. If you've seen Phantom of the Opera, whether you've seen it live or just seen the movie, you know that it opens with this, this great overture, this, majestic chandelier which rises above the audience, and it's just, it's a really good opening. It really draws you into the story, and it really builds up the kind of the suspense, the character of the Phantom. You don't see him until something like, I think it's close to half an hour in, is the first time that you actually see him on stage. And with this, there's really no opening. You just open on the Phantom. He's there. He's writing music. He's pining for Christine, and then he just has a song right off the bat. That song is "Till I Hear You Sing," and it is a very good song. It is probably I'd say one of the best songs in the entire thing. So they do open with a really strong song, but I did find it kind of strange that there was really there's no build up to his entrance in the show. It just opens up and he's just there. And I mean, most shows, even if it's not Phantom, most shows have some kind of overture. So I found that particularly strange. And another thing that really bothers me is they really messed up the timeline, because I freely admit that this is just a nerd rage type nitpick. That's fine. I freely admit that that's what I'm doing. But like I said, I'm just such a huge fan of the Phantom that these little things really bother me sometimes. If you read the description of the show, they say it is 1907. It is 10 years later after the events from the first show. Except the problem is, if you look at the original script for the original show, which I have, I own a book that actually has it printed in the back of the book, and I somewhere have the original London Cast CD, which has the whole thing printed in there as well. And if you read that, I'm not sure if it's ever stated outright in Phantom, but if you read the libretto, it says clearly that it is 1881 when the events of Phantom take place. So if it's 10 years later, it should be 1891. So that, I don't know where the 1907 thing is coming in there, but that bugs me, because don't they have somebody to check these things? I mean, you would think. So that doesn't really make sense. And pretty much everybody has talked about this, but the Phantom, he looks 10 years younger. He does not look like there's kind of been this tendency ever since the show opened to cast younger and younger men in the role of the Phantom. And it can work, but it doesn't always work that well. But I'll kind of go into that more when I do my review of Phantom, because what I want to do with that is do a comparison of the Broadway version and the U.S. tour, which is currently touring the U.S. along with Love Never Dies, because they've made changes from the Broadway version to the version that's currently touring. So that's what my review of Phantom is going to be. So I'll kind of move on from that, because I'll be discussing that probably a lot in that review. Okay, so, we move on. We've got the Coney Island Waltz. We've got Only For You, which is Meg's first song, and that's just kind of they're performing. Meg's the big leading lady. She's the ooh la la girl at Phantasma, which is this whole production that the Phantom has created. He's this big, he's this big mogul now. He's a businessman. And I noticed right away, as soon as Meg made her entrance, started singing, I was like, wow, I really like this Meg. She's really good. I didn't realize until after, when I read the program, that it was Mary Michael Patterson, who, if you're a big fan, you might recognize that name. She has played Christine on Broadway a couple of times. I believe I've seen her on Broadway once. And I know I've definitely seen clips of her on YouTube, and she's very good. She's one of the better Christines, I believe, that I've ever heard. So yeah, she just kind of stood out right from the get-go. She is very, very good. So those are fine. The songs, they don't really, one of the changes that kind of bothers me with this is Meg's character. She's just all over the place. The way it was written in the original London performance was that it sort of implied that she's in love with the Phantom. It never really says that outright, but it just kind of alludes to it. And it's kind of stupid, but it at least gives her some motivation for what comes later. And here they've really, really toned that down. There's still like tiny hints of it, but it's really toned down. And she seems, when Christine shows up, she seems happy. She seems, I don't know, it just doesn't. And then what they reveal later, there's like tiny allusions to it, but it's like you blink and you miss it. You might not even pick up on that. But I'll go over that when we get to that part. So we've got the scene between Meg and Madame Giry, who, when the hell did Madame Giry start hating Christine? That, I'm so confused about that, because, if you've seen Phantom, she is almost like that. They do that a little bit more in the movie that was based on the musical, the Gerard Butler movie. They make that even more pronounced, that she was actually like an adoptive mother, which that is not the case in the musical, but she's still kind of this motherly figure. She's her best friend's mother. She is somebody that she can trust, that she kind of knows about the Phantom, so she knows a little bit about what's going on. So she's kind of almost this mother figure to Christine. And then we jump 10 years later, and she suddenly just she suddenly hates her for some reason. I really perplexed about what they did to Madame Giry's character, because that that's not that's not the character that we saw last time, and her motivations are very, they don't make a lot of sense. And that's, again, something that I will touch on a little further on into the review. So they have this song, it's Mother Did You See, and it's just talking about Meg's performance. Did you see? Wasn't it great? Blah, blah, blah. We get some exposition about how they smuggled the Phantom, out of the opera house and somehow got him on a ship, got him over to America, and they started this whole business. And then, 10 years later, here we are. So basically, it just serves to explain to us how they got to this place. So that stuff, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't stand out in particular, but it's there. And then so here it starts getting weird. Like, the next scene is Christine disembarks, which is Christine and Raoul and Gustave, their son, getting off of the ship. And it's like, it's almost played like a parody of Phantom, because when Christine gets off the ship, it's like suddenly, like, there's this spotlight on her, like this heavenly light, and the music kind of makes this twinge, like, oh, and it really, it's a little weird. And she gets off and she's surrounded by reporters and everyone's being kind of jerks, and Raoul gets pissed, and so they go, and this really weird carriage shows up. It's a horseless carriage, and it's like 20 feet off. I mean, it's not that high, but it's really high off the ground, and they have to like climb this ladder into it, and it's just really, really weird. And they I don't know, maybe they just think that's just how things are in America, but I mean, that probably should have been the first indication that something was going on, because what's actually happening is, she was invited to sing for Oscar Hammerstein, who you might recognize that name, Rodgers and Hammerstein, who I think he was actually the father to the name that we might be more familiar with. I believe that's the case. I would have to look that up, but anyways, I digress. So what's happened is she was invited. The Phantom gets wind of this, and he ends up, manipulating them to come to him instead, and he offers to pay her double, because the whole reason that she's doing this, she's coming to perform, is because they need the money, because Raoul has turned into a drunk and a gambler, and he's got a lot of debts, and so this is the whole reason why they're even here to begin with. So basically the Phantom, sends his people on to pick him up and take him there, and that's what's going on there. So they go and they get to their hotel, and Raoul is bitching, and they've got the kid who is just the typical cute kid who wants to play with Raoul when he's just not having it. I mean, I just to tell you where I'm coming from, as far as I've always been a Phantom and Christine shipper, like that. I was always one of those girls who was like, oh my god, she should have stayed with the Phantom. Why did she go with Raoul? What's wrong with her? That's my inner 12-year-old girl, coming out a little bit there. So I've always, come at it from that angle. But I've never hated Raoul, though, and I don't really like what they did to him here, because they really just turned him into a jerk for no reason. And the reason is supposed to be, she needs to want the Phantom now. It needs to be believable that she would actually want to be with the Phantom instead. But it really just doesn't, it's just what they did to all of these characters is really the only one that didn't change that much is Christine. I mean, she changed a little bit, but they just took these people and just made them into something completely different. It's almost like it's not the same people. They're just like wearing the same clothes, and they look the same and they have the same names, but it's almost like it's completely different people. It's really strange. So they show up. So Raul gets this note that whisks him away, which of course the Phantom is behind that, and the whole reason is so the Phantom can get Christine alone. And she notices that this music, Gustav goes off to bed and whatever. And she notices that this music box is playing Point of No Return. It's playing like the opening strains of that song, and then boom, Phantom just kind of makes it's like this huge, loud music, and like all the dry ice and the fog starts coming, and it's just this very, very melodramatic entrance. It's just like out of nowhere. And of course, she faints, and then this is where Beneath a Moonless Sky happens, which is kind of this infamous song, if you're familiar with the show, which is it's really long, and it talks about how the Phantom and Christine at some point slept together, sometime between the events of Phantom of the Opera and of this show. I believe in the lyrics it says that it was the night before her wedding to Raoul. She goes to him and they sleep together, and okay, I can buy that, but what I can't buy is that the Phantom would have just left her. The reason that he gives said that he was ashamed and he was afraid of her rejecting him, of her leaving him, so he just takes off instead. And that I just don't buy that. I don't buy that. I can't see after him finally getting, what he wants, what he's been obsessed with, what he's been willing to kill for, what has driven him for at least a year out of his life, which has driven all of his motivations, all of his time and energy and his passion spent on this woman trying to win her love, and then he finally gets it, and he's just like, nope, bye. And I that never ever made sense to me that he would do that. So I think that really it doesn't make sense, and that's one of the big flaws of the show, is that the stuff really, none of it makes sense. And I don't know, I almost don't even know what to say about it. I can't see how the Phantom ever would have done that. There's another thing that'll be a little bit later that I can't see him ever doing either. So that really bothers me. So they sing this whole song, and I actually do enjoy the song. I like the tune. They actually used this tune in the 2004 movie. It was in the scene where she's riding to the cemetery. The melody from this song plays in the background, and I do like it. But it's just basically this really long song about how they slept together, and Christine reveals that she loved him and she was ready to leave Raoul for him, and instead he left her, so she just goes back to Raoul and they get married, and that's that. And that's followed immediately by Once Upon Another Time, and both of these songs are fine. I would say they're, along with Till I Hear You Sing, they're probably one of the standout songs of this soundtrack. And Christine, I really like the Christine. Her name is Megan Pignero. I'm sorry, I might be saying that wrong. And the Phantom is Garter Thor Cortez. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong as well. I believe he's from Iceland. So I'm not 100% sure how that's pronounced, but that's my best approximation of it. And they're both very good. I think the Phantom definitely has a very good voice. I I do think that he was given too much dialogue in this, because in Phantom of the Opera he really hardly has any dialogue. Almost everything that comes out of his mouth is sung. And I think in this he just had really too much dialogue, and it really didn't do him any favors, because he's really having to ham it up, because this is just such a melodramatic show. It's very soap opera-y, so he's really having to kind of like ham up his performance, and it really just strips away any of the intrigue and the mystery that surrounds his character. He's just kind of, and there's really not that much that's attractive about him at all. After they sing the song, and, the kid comes out crying because he had a nightmare, and, he meets the Phantom, and, after he goes off back to bed, because the Phantom's big thing is he wants Christine to sing for him again, which they've been doing nothing but singing since they met up, but that's musical logic for you. So that's his thing, is he wants Christine to sing for him, and she, is understandably upset at him that he left her after they slept together. So she's like, no, why should I? I don't owe you anything. And so he threatens to either abduct or kill her child if she won't do this. Like what? Why? Why would he do that? Why would he do something so cruel to the woman that he, is supposed to be in love with, supposed to be deeply, passionately, obsessively, completely head over heels in love with? Why would he do that? There's no, it's like there's no reason for Christine to go to him, to even want him, because he's just this jerk who's kind of manipulating her. And I love the character of the Phantom so much. I mean, he's such a good character in the first one, and he has that that mystery and that attraction to him that makes 12-year-old girls be like, oh my god, I want him. I mean, I totally admit that that's, where my inner 12-year-old comes out when it comes to Phantom stuff. But here, I just, and maybe it's because I'm experiencing this particular story as an adult. Maybe that's why I come at it so differently now. But I just don't see why, Christine would even want anything to do with this guy. And she kind of doesn't. The only reason she ends up agreeing to sing the song, because he offered to pay her double, which they need the money, and he threatened to kill her kid. So she is like, well, I guess I don't have a choice then, and I've got to do it. So this kind of sets up the big conflict in the show, which is basically, if she chooses to sing, it's like she's choosing the Phantom, and if she chooses not to sing, she's choosing Raoul. This is our big conflict. These are what the stakes are, and it's really no stakes at all. I mean, all that's really affected is this woman's love life. I mean, that's it. Rewind to the first one where, people are being murdered. People's lives are at stake. This whole opera house is at stake. I mean, there's a lot more going on than just, who will Christine pick in the end? I mean, that exists in the first one, definitely, but there's just a lot more hanging in the balance than, will Christine sing? Will she not sing? that's really all that we get. Um, so that happens. And this felt very rushed. It felt, I'm not sure if the runtime is shorter than Phantom or if it's or if it's the same, but it it really felt kind of short. Everything just seems really really rushed. And so our next number is the Bathing Beauty rehearsal, which that song comes in Act Two, and that's fine. I mean, it's rehearsal. I do kind of like the Bathing Beauty song. It's cute, it's catchy, it's so that happens. That's nothing really notable about that. Then we get Dear Old Friend, which is where Raoul and Christine reunite with Meg and Madame Giry, and this is where Meg and Christine are happy to see each other, but then when Meg finds out that Christine will be singing, then she kind of gets upset because she's supposed to be the leading lady. She's supposed to be the one that the Phantom is kind of grooming to be a big star. She's kind of like almost like she's in Christine's place this time around. So she's not too happy to hear that. And one change that they've made through the many changes they've made is in the London production, Raoul and Madame Giry were, when they saw each other, they were like immediately suspicious of each other and acted like they were horrible enemies. And here, they're happy to see each other, which makes more sense because they were, allies the last time we saw them. In the last one, she helped them find Christine, so they were on the same side here. So it makes more sense that they would be, more pleased to see one another. So, that song happens. It's sort of, I guess, sort of the equivalent to the Notes song in the first one, except that it's just not as good. We get, the overlapping dialogue and the twists and turns that, we get more of people's motivations. That's more or less all that song serves to do. And again, there's nothing that notable about it. It just kind of moves the plot along. So that happens, and then we move on to towards the end of this act. We have Beautiful with Gustav, which it's oh, you know what? And I completely skipped over Look with Your Heart, which is where this was earlier on, where Gustav gets his feelings hurt because Raoul won't play with him, and the song is basically saying, look with your heart to help you understand the yada yada. And it's pretty enough, I guess. It's fine. It's just not. It's definitely not a standout. It is, in this first act, Christine really doesn't get much of a chance to show off her vocal abilities. She absolutely does in Act Two, but I'll get to that. So yeah, I kind of glossed over that song, so I'm sorry. Yeah. So Look with Your Heart, not a whole lot to it. I don't think it's that great of a song. Okay, so back where we were. So Beautiful, yeah, it's got a pretty melody. And so what starts happening here is the Phantom has told Gustav, he's going to show him around Phantasma, show him all the exhibits, the different stuff they've got going on. And this leads into The Beauty Underneath, which is one of my favorite songs in this entire show. It's a really good song. And the plot behind the song is that the Phantom is showing Gustav around, and he's also starting to realize that he's starting to suspect that Gustav may be his child, which turns out to be that is the case. He is actually fathered by the Phantom and not Raoul. Raoul does not know this at this point. He believes that, he's his son. So he's starting to see the similarities. And, right before the beauty underneath happens, there's this part that they added this in. This wasn't in the earlier productions, where the beautiful song happens, and then Gustav starts playing these melodies on the piano, and he starts playing the cadenza from the end of the song The Phantom of the Opera, from the first one, where Christine sings higher and higher, and the Phantom is sing for me. They sort of recreate that scene with the Phantom and Gustav, and I would say that's probably really the only time in this show that I was really kind of mesmerized, by, Gustav is playing this tune that he shouldn't even really know, but he's playing it, and then he's singing it. And that kid that plays Gustav, there were two different kids. Their names are, shoot, where is this? Sorry, I'm looking in my program and I wasn't turned to the cast list. Okay, their names are Casey Lyons and Jake Miller. I'm not sure which one of them I saw last night, but whichever one I saw, that kid's got some pipes on him. I mean, that the kid can really sing. That was definitely very good. So yeah, that's really the only part where I was really kind of drawn in. I was really kind of mesmerized by what I was seeing, but it doesn't last, and it leads into the beauty underneath, which this song is really, it really should be the big showstopper of Act 1. It's definitely got it pretty much tried to be that. I think, it did have some nice set pieces and some nice things with the effects and stuff, with a bunch of sparkling lights and stuff, but they really rushed through it. This song had a nice little sort of like rock kind of intro to it, and that was left out because they just jump into the song without any kind of intro to it. And they've changed some of the lyrics, which that's fine. I mean, I don't have a big issue with them changing lyrics, because that happens a lot when shows are workshop, especially as much as this one has been. But they definitely took out some of Gustav's spoken lines that he has in the middle of it, and so it just feels really rushed. And I really think that's a shame, because that is just such a good song. It really, really is a good song, and it was sung well by Cortez, by the one playing the Phantom. But I don't like really, the whole show felt very rushed. It felt things were happening just a little too fast, and I was kind of surprised, at when it ended, and I looked at the clock to see what time it was. I'm like, really, that it was that quick, huh? It all felt very, very rushed, but this scene especially, which was probably the scene I was looking forward to seeing the most, so I was definitely pretty disappointed by that. So that's close to the end of Act 1. After that, let's see, that brings us to, so after that is when the Phantom confronts Christine, which that's the name of the number. It's called The Phantom Confronts Christine about Gustav, about, he's demanding to know, is this my child? And Christine tells him, yes, he is your child. And the fan, it's the acting he does, it's pretty decent. I mean, he bases it on Ben Lewis's performance in the Australian production, where he kind of sinks to the ground and starts crying, and tells him, you can never don't ever tell him the truth. And Christine leaves, and then he declares that everything he owns will go to Gustav. He'll be his heir, basically, because he's his child. And in the London production, when they did this scene, first of all, he wasn't wearing his mask. There are actually several scenes in the London version of this where he's not wearing his mask, and in the Australian version and then the version since, he keeps it on pretty much the entire time. The only unmasking scene we get is at the end of The Beauty Underneath, which is where he feels comfortable enough to show his face to Gustav, and he does so, and Gustav runs off screaming. Um, and then he puts it immediately back on. He has the wig off at that point, but he puts the mask right back on. And in the earlier productions, there's several scenes where he's not wearing it. There's this scene following The Beauty Underneath, when he takes it off, he keeps it off throughout The Phantom Confronts Christine. And there is a song in Act 2 called Devil Take the Hindmost, which I believe he's also unmasked in that scene as well in the earlier productions. And I really wish they had kept that, because it's kind of showing like he's more comfortable in his skin now. Like he's kind of in this freak show environment. So he's not as much of a standout as he was before. It's not, I mean, his face is still really messed up, but it's not, he's a little bit more comfortable, and people, probably aren't as afraid of him because they're seeing so many other, I mean, circus freaks, usually had, families and stuff too. So, yeah, I really wish that they had kept that, because he keeps the mask on for, except for that one scene, it's on for the entire show. I mean, I don't even know if they did the makeup job on him or not. So yeah, that one thing, I wish that they hadn't changed that. So I think that's unfortunate. Um, so that happens, and Madame Giry comes out, who is overheard, so she now knows that Gustav is the Phantom and Christine's child, and she is not happy about that, because she's not happy because the Phantom has said that, all his money, all his possessions, that it's all going to go to him, that he's going to pass on everything. And Madame Giry is very unhappy about this, because I guess she thought that all his stuff was going to go to her, because this motivation really doesn't make sense to me either, because she is going on saying, oh, this, she literally says the line, this bastard should never have been born, or some approximation of that. The word bastard is used, and she and they're kind of setting her up for suspicion for what comes later. You're supposed to think that she's the one that later on takes Gustav and tries to, which we'll get to that stuff later. But I mean, it's like some of these things, like this one, for example, I mean, they could have been settled by maybe just having a conversation with the guy, maybe being like, look, I know what's going on. I know you've just found out you have this child, and I'm kind of concerned about, my whatever deal they might have made about whatever, whatever finances she's getting since they kind of started this whole business together. I mean, have a conversation about it. Tell it, be like, I'm concerned about this. And talk it out. I mean, that whole thing probably could have been settled by just talking to him about it. But that's how we close out Act 1, is Madame Giry now knows who Gustav is, and she is unhappy, and she says that that bastard should never have been born, and that closes the curtain on Act 1. So that's where I'm going to leave it as far as the review goes. I'm going to go over Act 2 basically the same way I went over Act 1. And yeah, so far, just sort of some basic notes that I have about it is that like I said, it feels very rushed. The big showstopper song that should have been the showstopper was not really done that way, and everybody's motivations are just One thing I did want to mention also, another change that I wish they had not made, again, this carries over from the London production, was during The Phantom confronts Christine, you really, in that production, you really feel and this was the version that was played by Ramin Karimloo and Sierra Boggess. Is that how you say it? And well, you know who I'm talking about. And they are known for playing really well off each other. They have a lot of chemistry. That you really feel the passion between the characters when those two play the role. And there's this moment in that scene where she grabs his face, and this is with the mask off, mind you, where like she's about to kiss him, and they almost do, but then they don't. They pull back, and it's like you really, in that moment, you really feel the passion that these two have for each other. Like you really could believe that she would actually consider leaving her husband for this guy, because you see it right there in that scene, and they take that out. So again, it raises the question that why are we supposed to believe that she would leave her husband for this guy? I mean, her marriage has some problems, but she's still married to the guy for 10 years and they've got a child together. Well, we find out that's not the case, but still, they've got a family together, and there's just no, at this point in the show, we really don't see much chemistry between Christine and the Phantom, and that's another moment that I don't think that they should have taken out, because that would have shown, that they've still got this connection, that they still, have this kind of sexual, this sexual thing between them, that they've got that passion and that heat, and that it's, we could believe that that the stakes are really real, that really, this might actually happen. That's, I think, was a bad change that they made. So yeah, so that's my overall thoughts on Act 1. So that's all I've got for now. Like I said, I'll be recording Act 2 shortly here, and then I will upload that as well. And like I said earlier, this is the first video I'm doing of this sort where I'm reviewing something. So I welcome your feedback. If you like it, if you hate it, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'll definitely read all of them and, listen to what you all have to say. So until then, this has been Lily Luna, and thank you for listening. See you guys later. Bye.